One of the greatest contribution by the Aristotle in the field of political science is the classification or the sixfold classifications of the states, which is based on two grounds. The first ground is quantitative ground, which means the number of the person holding the sovereign power, and second is the qualitative terms, which means the objective and the aim or the end of the government. To make this classification, Aristotle studied over 158 constitutions of his time. That study marked the beginning of the comparative political analysis. He also analyzed the problems and the defects found in the Greeks' political system and gave practical suggestions to overcome these problems in his book, The Politics. Now let us discuss the Aristotle's classification of the constitution. According to Aristotle, if a state pursues policies and that policies are aimed at common and general welfare of the people, then such state is said to be normal. But if it pursues the interest of a few individuals for their selfish end, then it will be called as perverted government. Aristotle gave sixfold classification of states, which is considered as his greatest contribution. Even the idea of classification was borrowed from his master, that is Plato. He added the cycle of change, which is his original contribution. Under his cycle of change, no form of government is permanent. One form changes yielding place to another. For example, monarchy is replaced by tyranny or vice versa. It is also possible that monarchy is replaced by aristocracy or democracy or vice versa. To have stability, Aristotle insisted on borrowing the best practices from all the six forms of government. The classification of states was based on Aristotle's empirical investigations into 158 constitution of his time. Now let us see the classification done by Aristotle on the basis of quantitative matters, that is the number of person holding power. He says monarchy and tyranny is the form of government which is ruled by one, and aristocracy and oligarchy are also the form of government which is ruled by few, and the democracy and the polity are the form of government which is ruled by many. Further, his qualitative classification, that is the objective, which is based on the objective and the aim or the end of the government, is monarchy which is ruled by one, and the aristocracy which is ruled by few, and the polity which is ruled by many is considered as the normal type of or the good type of or the positive type of government, because he says these governments are looking for the welfare of the people. And the second one, that is the perverted or the corrupt form of government, includes tyranny which is ruled by one, the oligarchy which is ruled by few, and the democracy which is ruled by many. Aristotle, in his masterpiece, that is the Politics, given the reason behind the degeneration of the states. He says if there is a state which is ruled by one and he is looking after the welfare of all, then that is monarchy. If there is a state which is ruled by one and he is looking after the glory of him and he is not at all concerned about community, then it is tyranny. And if there is a state which is ruled by few and they are looking after every one of the people in that country, then that is aristocracy. If that few people want to pursue wealth and they are not at all concerned about the state, then that is oligarchy. And Aristotle says if there is a country and which is ruled by many and they are looking after the welfare of all, then that is polity. If there is a country which is ruled by many and they are looking after the welfare of poor people only, then that is democracy. In fact, Aristotle was against to democracy because as per his views, the poor masses are in control of the government, which is results in the poor administration and heavy taxation. He thought that the masses of the people don't understand or do not understand the technicalities of the administration. Among all forms of government, Aristotle regarded the polity as the best practicable state or the best form of government. He says in polity, the power vests with the middle class people with some property to maintain the balance of power. He believed that the middle class possesses moderate qualities of head and heart, According to Aristotle, the middle class is neither violent nor radical. Moreover, the people of the middle class are intelligent. That's why the great statesmen and the lawmakers used to be from the middle class. He says the middle class consists of equals and thus it contributes to the security of the state along with its own security. Just like his master, who was himself a philosopher and he insisted on the rule of a philosopher king, Aristotle, who was belonged to middle class, insisted on the rule of middle class as ideal. According to Aristotle, the rule of middle class is conducive for the rule of law. Further, he says the stability and the moderation are also the virtues of such a system. Aristotle says in a polity there is a blend of rich and poor, quality and quantity, birth and numbers. The oligarch element in the polity brings in the prestige of birth, wealth, status, education and experience. The democratic elements strengthens it with the prestige of number. Aristotle preferred the practical balance to check the extremes. His polity was a mean to escape from the cycle of political change. According to him, this cycle goes on with unchanging radius and endless succession. Now let us discuss the criticism against Aristotle's classification of state. Critic says his views on democracy as perverted form of government is something that is not valid today, because today democracy is regarded as the best form of government and a successful successor of the monarchy. But Aristotle failed to predict these things. According to others, Aristotle failed to make distinction between the constitution and the government. Today, the constitution is a provision either written or unwritten, but those should be followed by the government in its administration. In other words, constitution is only a framework within which the government works. The method in which Aristotle classified the state, which put emphasis on the aim of the government, has been disqualified by the political thinkers, and according to them, today the states are classified on the nature of the constitution, amendment of the constitution and the distribution of powers, etc. In another angle, Aristotle says when end of the state becomes welfare of the people, that will be normal type of government or the good type of government. In that sense, today almost means the almost all modern world declared that its goal is welfare of its people. In that sense, it would be confusing and not fit for modern world. Critics also point out to the fact that the Aristotle classified only governments and not the states. State may also classified as secular or theocratic, unitary or federal, and so on. Critics says that the Aristotle model of best state is not clear in all its details. At every steps, details are missing. Even his idealization of middle classes may not be acceptable to all. His polity is mixture of idealism and realism, which present confusing picture of the best state. In spite of all these criticisms, we are greatly indebted to Aristotle for providing us the traditional classification of governments. Aristotle had borrowed it from Plato, who in turn had borrowed it from Socrates. Though Aristotle's classification is subject to criticism, it is accepted in modern times that Aristotle's concept of rule of law of the constitutional state is important contribution. His view that any government without constitution is a tyranny, whether it is the government of one man or the government of few men or government of many men, is also noteworthy. His classification of constitution is only a part of his contribution to political science. One may also say that his ideas are practical and noteworthy, especially the classification of constitution, which is logical, understandable and concrete.